On the serious side of climate change and bushfires, let me revisit this terrible outburst from Green Senator Jordan Steele-John.
You are no better than a bunch of arsonists. Borderline arsonists.
Yesterday on Insiders, a fellow Greens MP was asked about this.
Adam Bandt, welcome to Insiders.
Morning, Prem.
Adam Bandt, on that day, the fire warning had been increased to catastrophic for the first time ever in this country.
Let's just stop Fran Kelly's question there and come back to it in a little while. The catastrophic category is a new category introduced 10 years ago to make sure people paid attention, to alert people. A recommendation after Victoria's Black Saturday bushfires that killed 173 people. It was not the first time the conditions had been seen. It was not even the first time the category had been used. It was only the first time in 10 years that it's been used in the Greater Sydney area. It's been declared previously in New South Wales, including in the Hunter Valley, north of Sydney, as recently as 2017. And the same category, dubbed Code Red in Victoria, has been declared on multiple occasions in multiple states since the very first season it was put in place in 2010. Media misinformation travels wildly, especially if it suits the narrative. Many journalists got this wrong, and CNN told the world with help from Australian journalists.
More now from 9 News reporter Ali Walsh.
It will be the first time in history that Sydney has ever been met with such catastrophic conditions.
No, as I said, it was just the first time the category had been used in the Sydney region in the 10 years that it's existed. They were terrible conditions, of course, and the worst in Sydney for a decade. That's bad enough without embellishment. Still, the hype continued.
Already, from the pictures we're seeing, they look to be catastrophic. Why do you think Australia should care more about climate change than most countries?
Well, it's an unusual situation in that most of the most intense impacts of climate change are coming first in the global south. It's a sort of unfortunate fact, but the countries in the world that have done the least to produce global warming are going to be hit hardest by its impacts. But Australia is sort of the one big exception to that. Because of the accident of geography, it's a relatively wealthy nation that is also already suffering intensely from climate change impacts.
That was the author of The Uninhabitable Earth, suggesting we're getting our just desserts here and making huge leaps of logic about the impact of climate change on drought and fire, something expert scientists disagree on, as we've shown you here before. Anyway, let's go back to that question on Insiders.
Except that that kind of language on that day is not only insensitive but is out of line?
I think you should listen to the emotion in Jordan Steele-John's voice as he's talking there. I think he's the youngest member of Parliament. He's part of a generation that is terrified and aghast with what they're seeing with the climate crisis.
So Bandt says Steele-John's erroneous and offensive slur should be forgiven because he's terrified and emotional. That's the trouble with the climate debate in a nutshell. Emotion triumphing over reason. And much media feeds this hysteria, which is why the latest ABC activism is a deep worry. They're trying to form an ABC staff climate crisis advisory group. This group, according to instigator Barbara Hagen, a Melbourne-based producer and presenter, will try to develop ways to report and inform Australians about the climate crisis using a solutions journalism approach. It would report to management with strategies to respond to the climate crisis, both internally and externally. Climate crisis. They give the game away, don't they? This is Extinction Rebellion level hyperbole and alarmism deep inside the national broadcaster. This is not rational, not science-based. Adam Bandt and Jordan Steele-John would support this. Senior journalists have already endorsed it. It seems at the ABC no one is in charge.